I had been a teacher at Pine Hollow Elementary for about 5 years. It was a small school in a quiet town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the biggest event was the annual bake sale, and where nothing really ever happened. At least that was true until the kids started disappearing. It began slowly, so slowly no one really noticed at first. The first kid to vanish was Ellie Hansen, a quiet girl from the 3rd grade. She didn't show up for school one day, and at first everyone assumed she was just homesick. But then her parents reported her missing. No one had seen her leave the house that morning, no signs of struggle, no forced entry. She was just gone. The town rallied around the family, searching the woods, combing through every inch of the town. But Ellie was never found. That was 2 months ago. Then it happened again. Ben Carter from my class didn't show up one day. I thought he was sick, just like Ellie, but by the end of the day, word spread. He hadn't come home the night before. The same thing. No signs of a struggle, no clues, just another child gone without a trace. It didn't stop there. One by one, kids started vanishing from the school. It was always the quiet ones, the ones who sat at the back of the classroom, who didn't make a fuss. There was no pattern, no way to predict who would be next. The town was in a panic, parents pulling their children from school, locking them indoors. But none of it seemed to matter. The kids kept disappearing. After Ben disappeared, the school's atmosphere changed. It was no longer a safe, bright place. The halls felt darker, the air colder, and the classrooms, once filled with laughter and chatter, were silent. The teachers were nervous, parents were terrified, and I was scared too. But the strange part, the kids who were left didn't seem as frightened as we were. They whispered among themselves, huddled in tight groups, their eyes darting nervously toward the empty seats in the classroom. I caught them glancing at the back of the room more than once, but when I asked them about it, they would just look away, refusing to say anything. One afternoon, after most of the students had gone home, I stayed behind to catch up on grading. The school was quiet, too quiet, and the shadows in the hallways seemed to stretch longer than they should. I tried to focus, but the uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Something was wrong. I stood up and stretched, deciding to take a walk through the school to clear my head. As I wandered the empty halls, I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. Every creak of the old floorboards, every whisper of the wind outside made me jump. My footsteps echoed eerily, and the silence pressed in on me from all sides. When I passed by Ben's locker, I stopped. The locker door was slightly ajar, even though all the kids had been gone for hours. A sense of dread filled my chest, but I reached out and opened it anyway. Inside was nothing unusual, just books and papers. But then I noticed something tucked in the corner, barely visible under a pile of crumpled worksheets. It was a small, worn piece of paper. I pulled it out, smoothing it against my palm. It was a drawing, simple and childlike, but what it showed sent a chill down my spine. It was a picture of a group of children standing in a circle, their faces blank and featureless, holding hands. Above them was a figure, a tall, dark figure, towering over the children, its face hidden by a hood. I stared at the drawing, my hands shaking. Ben must have drawn this before he disappeared, but what was it supposed to mean? My heart raced as I stuffed the paper in my pocket and slammed the locker shut. I needed to leave. Something about the school felt wrong, like the walls themselves were closing in. As I turned to leave, I heard something, a faint, rhythmic tapping, like the sound of footsteps, small, light footsteps. I froze, listening. The tapping echoed down the hallway, slow and deliberate. It wasn't my imagination. Someone was still in the building. I walked cautiously, the sound growing louder as I approached the end of the hall. The light above flickered, casting long shadows along the floor. The tapping continued, leading me toward the back of the school, where the older classrooms were. I followed it, my pulse quickening, until I reached room 12, the room that hadn't been used in years. The door was slightly open, just enough for a sliver of light to spill out. My breath caught in my throat, but I couldn't turn back now. I pushed the door open, and what I saw inside made my blood run cold. The room was empty, except for a small group of children standing in a circle in the middle of the floor. Their backs were to me, their heads bowed as they held hands, swaying slightly in the dim light. They were whispering something, a soft, chanting sound that sent a chill down my spine. I stepped forward, my voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" The chanting stopped. The children slowly turned to face me, their eyes wide and blank, their faces expressionless. I recognized some of them, kids who had disappeared, kids who should not have been there. Ben was among them, his gaze fixed on me, his mouth twisted in a strange, eerie smile. I stepped back, fear surging through me. "Ben, what's going on?" He didn't answer. None of them did. They just stood there, watching me, their smiles growing wider, more unnatural. I felt something cold on my neck, like icy breath, and I turned around slowly. In the corner of the room, in the deepest shadow, stood the figure from Ben's drawing. It was tall, its body hidden beneath a long, dark cloak. Its face, if it had a face, was hidden in the shadows, but I could feel its eyes on me, boring into me, cold and ancient. The air around me grew thick, heavy, and I could barely breathe. I tried to move, to run, but my legs felt like lead. The children's chanting started again, louder this time, their voices rising in a twisted, unnatural harmony. The figure stepped forward, gliding across the floor, its presence suffocating. I stumbled back, crashing into a desk, my heart racing. I wanted to scream, to shout for help, but no sound came out. The figure loomed over me, its shadow stretching across the room. The chanting reached a fever pitch, the air buzzing with energy. I felt its cold fingers brush against my skin, and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor of room 12. The children were gone, the figure gone. The room was silent, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. I stumbled out of the school, the drawing still clenched in my hand. The kids had been taken, stolen away by something I couldn't understand, something dark and ancient that had been hiding in the shadows of that school for years. And I had come too close. I never went back to Pine Hollow Elementary. I couldn't. The school closed down not long after, the disappearances too much for the town to bear. But every night I hear it, the chanting, soft and rhythmic, echoing in the back of my mind. And I know deep down that whatever took those kids isn't done yet.